Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're continuing the late scholar Lu Meng Let's Talk Lore series with episode 6, titled Retaking Jing. Now last time, we ended as news of Liu Bei's conquest of the Yi province reached Sun Quan. Naturally, given their agreement from before, Sun Quan expected the return of the Nan commandery, and to facilitate this return, Sun Quan sent Zhuge Jin to meet with Liu Bei. During their meeting, Liu Bei attempted to delay the return, claiming that he still needed the commanderies in the Jin province to assist his continued conquest of the Liang province in the northwest, and that he would return the commandery once he had conquered the Liang province. Hearing this, Sun Quan knew right away that Liu Bei had no intentions to actually return the commandery. So in an attempt to seize the governance of the border commanderies by force, Sun Quan sent chief secretaries for the border commanderies of Nan, Changsha, and Guiyang in hopes of assuming administration over them. Guan Yu, who was left in charge of Liu Bei's holdings in the Jin province, promptly blocked the entry of the Wu envoys, and at this point, Sun Quan decided that war would be the only option. General Lu Meng was sent to lead a force of 20,000 troops to attack the lightly defended southern commanderies of Changsha, Guiyang, and Lingling, while General Lu Su was given 10,000 troops to track Guan Yu's movement in the Nan commandery. Sun Quan himself personally led the reserve forces positioned in the rear at Lukou. Initially, because of how Liu Bei had taken most of his troops with him for the conquest of the Yi province, the southern commanderies were basically undefended, as both Changsha and Guiyang would surrender immediately without putting up any resistance to Lu Meng's army. But when it came to the commandery of Lingling, the local administrator, Hao Pu, decided to rally his limited garrison forces as he postured to defend the commandery to the death. Unfazed by the size of this defense, Lu Meng planned to set up siege, but before he could do so, he received an order from Sun Quan to give up the attack on Lingling in order to march back to reinforce Lu Su, as their advance into the Jin province has provoked Liu Bei to march back from the Yi province in person along with 50,000 troops. Now, Lu Meng knew he could not disobey a direct order, but he also knew that he was so close to taking Lingling, so before he made Sun Quan's order public and turned around the army, he decided that he was going to first try to trick the local administrator Hao Pu into surrendering immediately. First, Lu Meng had in his army a personal friend of Hao Pu named Deng Xuanzhi, who Lu Meng had captured in his march through the Changsha commandery. Second, instead of telling his troops and officers to prepare for a return march to Lu Su, he instructed them to prepare for a siege. Lastly, he brought Deng Xuanzhi into his army camp and waved the letter that Sun Quan had written him in front of Deng Xuanzhi without actually showing him the content of the letter. Then Lu Meng told Deng Xuanzhi that he had just received news that Liu Bei's army had engaged Cao Cao's forces in Hanzhong, and that Cao Cao's general Xia Houyuan had defeated Liu Bei and now have him trapped in the mountain path of Hanzhong. And at the same time, Sun Quan and the Wu army had personally arrived and also defeated and chased Guan Yu out of the Nan commandery already. So given how the balance of power is tipping heavily in their favor, he should go do his friend Hao Pu a favor and inform him of these developments in order to convince him to surrender without farther needless bloodshed. Or else, they would launch the siege assault tomorrow morning, and as you can see around camp, the troops are all making their final preparations already. Not knowing that this was a ploy by Lu Meng, Deng Xuanzhi was released as an envoy to Hao Pu, and after informing his friend of the grim news, Deng Xuanzhi lobbied Hao Pu to reconsider his position and to surrender. Faced with such terrible news all of a sudden from a friend that he trusted, Hao Pu in the end decided that farther resistance would only put everyone in the city in danger for a lost cause, so he agreed to surrender and sent Deng Xuanzhi back to Lu Meng to inform Lu Meng of the decision. Delighted that the plan had worked, Lu Meng waited for Hao Pu to personally exit the city, and once Hao Pu did, Lu Meng quickly sent in troops to control all 4 gates before showing Hao Pu the real letter that Sun Quan had written. Knowing now that he had been tricked, Hao Pu could do nothing, as Lu Meng would take control of the city, before turning his remaining army north to regroup with Lu Su's forces. Now, once back with Sun Quan and Lu Su, Lu Meng and the Wu army did not actually engage Liu Bei's forces, as the two sides were able to come to terms and negotiate a acceptable compromise. For both parties, the news of Cao Cao's Hanzhong offensive made them quickly realize that a direct conflict now over the sparsely populated southern parts of the Jin province would bring them little benefits and only aid their common enemy in Cao Cao. So, in an agreement that would become known as the Treatise of the Xiang River, Liu Bei and Sun Quan redrew the borders between the two factions, with the Xiang River as the new boundary. The commanderies of Changsha and Guiyang would now belong to Sun Quan, while Lu Meng's latest conquest of Linling would actually be returned to Liu Bei, along with the captured administrator Hao Pu. And with these borders settled, Liu Bei would race his army back to Hanzhong to face off against Cao Cao directly, while Sun Quan would turn his forces around for an opportunity to strike at Hefei again. And this time, Sun Quan would know that Cao Cao would not be able to send any reinforcement to Hefei, with the majority of the Wei forces now committed out west for the Hanzhong offensive against Liu Bei. Now, despite this peaceful resolution, Lu Meng was still handsomely rewarded by Sun Quan for his smooth conquest of the three southern commanderies, as the counties of Xunyang and Yangxin would be given over to Lu Meng as his title land, where all incomes from these two counties would now become Lu Meng's private property. However, despite their ability to claw back the two southern commanderies in the Jin province from Liu Bei, Sun Quan's plan to take Hefei would completely backfire, as this 250 siege of Hefei would also happen to be the infamous defense and sortie that would turn Zhang Liao from a famed general into an immortalized legend of the Three Kingdoms period. And for those who are interested in what exactly happened during this failed siege, please check out the link at the top right for a full episode of Let's Talk Lore on this infamous siege of Hefei. For the purpose of our Lu Meng Let's Talk Lore here, all we have to know is that Lu Meng, along with Gan Ning and Ling Tong, were instrumental in protecting Sun Quan during their final retreat from Hefei, and without their efforts, Sun Quan would surely have died at the hands of Zhang Liao. Now, following this massive setback and Cao Cao's return from his failed Hanzhong campaign, where Liu Bei would defeat him, Lu Meng would be assigned to remain behind at Ruxukou with General Jiang Qin in the concealed military dock and fort that he had previously suggested to be built in preparation for attacks from Cao Cao in the future. And sure enough, Cao Cao's army would return in late winter of 216, only to launch their attacks on Ruxukou in February of 217. Unlike Cao Cao's previous campaign here, the fort and dock helped Lu Meng and Jiang Qin hold their position for close to a month. And similar to last time, with spring approaching, Sun Quan was able to negotiate a peace term with Cao Cao. Only this time, it was slightly unfavorable for Sun Quan, as the defeat at Hefei in the previous year and the pressure exerted by Cao Cao at Ruxukou basically forced Sun Quan's hand into essentially a surrender to Cao Cao in this campaign. For Lu Meng and Jiang Qin's effort during the month-long defense, both were promoted, with Lu Meng becoming the general who guards the left and Jiang Qin becoming the general who guards the right. Lu Meng's rank would also be elevated from just the lieutenant general to the title of Huwei Jiangjun, meaning the general with the presence of a tiger. More importantly to Lu Meng's career, by the winter of 217, Lu Su would pass away due to illness, as Lu Meng would ascend to not only take command of Lu Su's personal retinue, but also essentially assume the role of the Grand General for the majority of Sun Quan's forces, especially on the Western Front, as Lu Meng would now become Wu's counterpart to Guan Yu in the Jin province. And to find out how Lu Meng and Guan Yu would ultimately turn to war and how Lu Meng would take down Guan Yu, come back next time as we'll continue our series next week. Now, hopefully y'all have enjoyed this episode enough to consider subscribing to the channel for more content on Three Kingdoms history, or simply support the channel by leaving a comment below, or just by hitting the like button. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye!